I felt like it was giving a Cafe Luso while I was watching it.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yes.
Maybe.
I felt the pain of having to wait so long for your food. Granted, in this episode, they were just waiting for a table, but I felt the anger building as I was watching them wait for this table at the restaurant.
Meet Sara and Samantha.
Two cousins obsessed with exploring the vast pop culture landscape, one recommendation at a time.
In each episode, one clueless cousin shares real-time reactions as they navigate the twists and turns of a pop culture topic selected by the other.
From travel to movies,
Little Debbie's to trashy novels,
get ready to eavesdrop on the candid reactions and dynamic conversations you can only have with family.
This is Foreign and Familiar.
Welcome to Foreign and Familiar. I am Samantha.
And I'm Sara.
Sara, awesome to see you as always.
Of course.
You're my cousin.
I'm so excited to see you.
Oh, I just love you so much. So we are here. We are recording season 3, and I am having my beverage of choice, which I feel like I had to talk to you about because it is Jameson and ginger ale and lime.
Oh, of course.
So I have always been a vodka drinker. I tend to kind of stay away from brown liquor. I think that is a safe rule in general in life. Brown liquor does weird things to people. So this summer, Sara, cousin husband, and I, and Thomas, Eric's husband, who guested on our Scream podcast a couple weeks ago, went to Dublin, and cousin husband and I like to say got trashed, although I don't know that he would say he was, but like he was. You were there.
We were there for a long time.
We were there for a long time drinking Jameson and ginger and lime at the Jameson distillery. And, you know, it just caught up to us. So I will say that it has carried back for a nice post-dinner nightcap wind down. It has been excellent and delicious, and it is tied back to us.
Yeah, it was such a great trip.
It was an awesome trip. I think we should definitely make a point to do a bonus app on it for
Definitely.
sure. So
yes,
that'll be coming. Everybody stay tuned for that. Sara, you drinking anything good right now?
Just some water right now.
Sara, you are the beacon of what most people should aim to be. You're hydrated. You're a teacher. So it's okay.
Sure.
I'm on the far enough on the other end of the spectrum that I'm holding it down for all of us deplorables down here. So
oh my gosh.
I'm glad that you're staying hydrated while I am slowly but surely pickling my liver in Jameson and ginger ale. So we're set on drinks, but we all know that podcasting is sweeter with a snack, and our snack of choice is obviously Little Debbie. And so, Sara, what are we reviewing today?
So today we are talking about the apple glazed donut stick.
Also the regular donut sticks as well.
Also the regular donut
yes,
sticks too.
Okay.
Right. So the donut sticks in general are cake-style donut sticks coated with a sweet glaze. And of course, the apple ones are then just flavored with an apple flavoring. I thought the regular donut sticks were delicious. I think the apple flavoring was a little too artificial for my taste, which is strange to say because there's nothing that's not artificial about Little Debbie. But
we go through this all the time. I actually think it's probably like it's not as bad as we think it is, but it's definitely not as good as we want to tell ourselves.
Right. It's I mean, this is not the epitome of a healthy lifestyle here, just snacking on Little Debbie's nonstop. But anyway,
we chew them to get the flavor and spit them out.
It's true. We have a spit bucket for every time.
Not
totally.
True. I wish that were. Listen, Little Debbie are the key to my hourglass figure.
Yes.
Especially on the bottom side. I wish I had that discipline.
Honestly, cousin husband and I have been talking about cognizant of what we're eating, and he was like, I think you need to stop snacking. I was like, I don't know what you mean. I only have a Little Debbie for breakfast and then one after lunch and then maybe dinner. So I think everything's fine.
I don't know much about marriage. I've never been married, but I think if my husband would say to me that I need to stop snacking, that would be grounds for divorce. Okay. Like, do your own thing. I'm going to snack how I want to snack. And that's the situation.
Okay, but to be fair, I've developed a reputation among my family that if someone can't finish their dessert, I will finish them for them. They just push plates in front of me. So I definitely have a sweet tooth.
You go to the gym, though.
Could I back off on the Little Debbie's and the other sweets? Of course I could. Am I going to? Probably not.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this before. This is even more fodder for why you need to leave Cousin Husband in the dust and come live a life with me. We can figure it out, Sarah. We can figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Well, Sam, what did you think of the donut sticks?
I thought that the original glazed donut sticks were fantastic. I don't know how to describe it other than a really good donut. You can kind of taste the grease. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's crumbly, it's glazy, it's like a gas station donut, cakey. I thought it was delicious. It actually blew me away a little bit. I just could not. I thought this was so good. The apple donut sticks. It's not even that I necessarily thought it was too artificial of a flavor. It kind of reminded me of almost an apple cider glaze. It's that I really felt like I had to hunt to find that flavor. I bought 2 boxes and then I sent you half and then I kept half. And I didn't keep the boxes, so I would just grab the sticks at random. Until the end of the donut stick or two bites in the donut stick was I going, oh, this is the apple one. I felt like it was a very, very subtle flavor. I liked the flavor. I don't know that I necessarily think that they need to have 2 varieties because to me, they were pretty similar. I would take either of them to tell you the truth, but that original donut stick, and again, chalk that up to me walking by the Little Debbie donut sticks all the time and thinking it can't be something that they do well, and they do it excellent. So these little kind of one-offs from Little Debbie that aren't your brownies, aren't your most popular ones, there are some really, really good deep cuts. And I would say I would get a Little Debbie large format donut stick in a gas station, hands down. And here's the thing, they come in, I think 8. They're kind of big. They're not huge. I wouldn't even buy them for my house though, because I would eat them all. That's how delicious I found them.
Yeah, I agree. I would, if I were at besides Sheetz, because I do love a Sheetz donut, if I were at any other gas station and it was their donut or a Little Debbie donut, I would probably take the Little Debbie donut stick.
Well, that's how we're from Western PA, and you know that because we love Sheetz.
We love Sheetz.
I love Sheetz. There are 2 in Lancaster now when I go home to visit my family. We did spend time in Altoona, though, which is where Sheetz was born, so we're PA girls through and through.
We're a little biased.
I spent most of my college years at Sheetz.
Yeah, honestly, it kept us alive for 4 years.
Little Debbie donut sticks, absolute winners. You know what goes great with donuts is a cup of coffee at Monk's Coffee Shop in New York City. Sarah, what a segue into our episode for today. We are talking about the comedy titan show Seinfeld, which I was raised on and familiar with, and Sarah was foreign to. Sarah, before we jump in, I would love to just try to understand. No shame. This is a safe space. How have you not seen Seinfeld?
I think there are a couple of reasons. I have seen episodes here and there, but I have not consistently watched episodes of Seinfeld at any point in my life. First of all, I think because I was younger, it's just not something that I was exposed to. Also, I'm really picky about shows with laugh tracks.
Is it a laugh track or is it a live studio audience, though?
I don't know. I'm really picky about both, actually. And so I've gone through periods of my life where I was okay with it with certain shows, then I couldn't stand it, and now it's kind of hit or miss. But
so here's what I will say on that, not to cut you off, although I just did. I would agree with you. I don't like laugh tracks because I don't need somebody cueing me on what's funny. If it's funny, I will think it is funny. Right? I'm sure you have seen the YouTube videos of the Big Bang Theory without the laugh track.
Yes.
So we're on the same page on that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that I just kind of avoided all laugh track shows for a period of time, or live studio audience shows. Anything that had somebody laughing in it, I just avoided. Now I think there are shows that I can go back and watch and it's not as noticeable, and I think Seinfeld falls into that category. So let's go ahead and get into it. Why did you recommend this for this episode?
So a couple different reasons. I love Seinfeld. I would say it is my favorite comedy of all time. I grew up watching it. So when the final episode aired, I was 13. And so I remember Seinfeld's on Thursday nights, new episodes, really thinking it was very funny. It was appointment television. There's no getting around that. Then it went into syndication, and I would watch it with one of my best friends who was in Altoona with me. We would watch it every afternoon, and it's very similar. I've probably seen every Seinfeld episode 12 times each. Let's just say, and that actually might be low. Took off watching it for a couple years. It kind of also disappeared from syndication. There have been other shows that have come on, and now it's starting to come back into syndication, and I'm watching it again in my 30s. It's just still so funny. For me, it's really held up, and I understand the characters and some of the dialogue a little bit more. I am living in Chicago with a cast of characters and friends, and the show is about people in their 30s in New York. It's a show about nothing, kind of living your day-to-day life, and I feel like I really see myself and a lot of my friends in the cast here. On top of that, we talked about last season, when I was watching Letterkenny, I felt like there were a lot of similarities, particularly in the minutia of the topics that are discussed between the characters. And I think I had said in that episode, it felt like a small town Canadian Seinfeld. Because I know of your affinity for Letterkenny, I thought this would be a good parallel for you to see.
Totally. I think the appreciation of the minutia is something that has just come along with age. I think it's as people get older, they're able to relate to that a little bit more. For example, the muffin top. That's exactly how I eat muffins. And I don't know that I previously would have found it funny, somebody pointing that out, but now I find it hilarious.
It's not top of the muffin to you. Then he's like, no, it is. It's just so stupid. Yes, it's all of these small things, and the more you watch it, I mean, they have an entire episode about people eating candy bars with a knife and fork, and someone eating M&Ms with a spoon. It's just observational humor. And
Yes.
what I have found is, and maybe it's because of Jerry Seinfeld in this show, but I am still very much drawn to observational humor. Seth Meyers, I've seen him. I've actually seen Jerry Seinfeld live. Joel McHale, when he was on Talk Soup or The Soup. I do like, and am kind of drawn to, let's call out the absurdities of what we are doing as a society and some of the societal rules. I find a lot of humor in that, especially the older you get. Someone can give you a look, or there's a weird interaction. And how much time do we spend in our lives? Sarah, how much time do you and I spend talking about something that somebody said, or like a weird, awkward interaction?
Right.
And
Like, how did they say it? What happened before? What happened after? What do you think they meant? Do you think it's
and then like
crazy.
hours later, one of us will be like, you know what I think happened though? I
Yes.
think that they thought that this is what that was. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
to kind of have a whole comedy around that, I was just really drawn to it.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to talk about this. Before we start, though, Sam, what cultural notes do our listeners need to know if they're like me and they are new to the Seinfeld universe?
So many things that you need to know. Seinfeld ran on NBC and primetime from 1989 to 1998. It was 9 seasons. The story, and really there kind of isn't a story. The show is set on 4 New Yorkers, friends in their 30s, that are living their lives in the city. Lots of single, lots of dating, work, promotions, firing, engagements. It's famously known as the show about nothing. I think that that's very accurate. New York is almost the fifth character. Sex and the City wishes that they could incorporate New York as a character the way that Seinfeld does, but it's really a show about nothing. It's standalone. You can watch any episode. You don't have to think that hard for Seinfeld. So you could just turn it on and watch it. There is no character growth ever with any of these characters. There was a mantra of the show's producers, which was no hugging and no learning. I think that's a nice contrast with Letterkenny, where we have said that even for me watching the 10 episodes, and we will break down, we did the same format for Seinfeld that we did for Letterkenny. There's a point where I could say when I watched Letterkenny, I could see the growth in the characters just from the beginning to the end.
I think of comedy shows in the past, like seeing commercials for season finales or new seasons. It was always some big drama is going to happen. Either somebody's getting married or having a baby or something along those lines. And so knowing that that's not the case with this show, I think sets it apart from any other comedy show that I've watched.
Absolutely. I would say that it was the number one show on television. It's widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential shows of all time. It's been included as number one on lists from Entertainment Weekly, Rolling Stone, TV Guide. The Writers Guild of America said it was the second best written series of all time, second only to The Sopranos, which I've never seen. And here's the thing, people that love The Sopranos love The Sopranos. You know who else though is The Wire. People that watch The Wire love The Wire.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say because I haven't seen those. It's highly awarded. It was awarded the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series in 1993. In 94, it won the Golden Globe. It won all of the Screen Actors Guild Awards towards the end of it. All of the four main characters, except for one, and I'll ask you, has won a Golden Globe or an Emmy. Who would you think would be the outcast that didn't win? It's kind of mind-blowing that all four of them didn't take something home, especially since it was on for 9 years. But who would you think the outcast is?
Right. This is so tough. I'm going to say, was it Jerry Seinfeld?
I do think acting wise, he is the weak link. Now,
yeah,
obviously, he is the writer of the show. It is his comedy. It is it's his show. It's George. It's Jason Alexander. And the issue is that him and Kramer, Michael Richards, were always running against each other. And Michael Richards was always winning. And so, yes, Elaine has won, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Jerry won, interestingly enough, a Golden Globe, but did not win an Emmy. Seinfeld has, to this day, spurred conversations and spurred, it's a bedrock of pop culture from the humor that's in there. So just a couple of the phrases here. The soup Nazi. Is somebody sponge worthy when you're dating? Is someone sponge worthy? Yada, yada, yada. To skip details in a story. The bubble boy. Shrinkage.
I know, shrinkage.
Yes. Regifting and de-gifting. They're talking about just gifting etiquette, which is really funny. An invitation, which is an invitation that you receive very close to the actual day of the event. So Elaine says it's an invitation. And because it's like they get the credit for sending the invitation, but who could really go to something?
Right.
So
right.
I actually use the word invitation to describe a situation with friends within the past 3 weeks. So this is an invitation. Man hands is a huge one. I feel like when I watch it sometimes now, it looks a little old.
I think there are definitely parts that date it, the way it was filmed, and just some of the things that they're doing. The one episode, Elaine is doing this phone trains to try to get her sandwich card back. So just not really using cell phones. There is a lot that kind of dates the show, but I do think it still holds up.
I think that the situational humor is very funny, even if they have an out. That is what I have from a cultural note perspective. I think, Sarah, we kick it to break, and then we're going to discuss some of the characters And we will talk about the finale. So we'll do all that on the other side.
All right, we are back from our break and we are ready to talk all things Seinfeld. This is a beast to tackle, so I can't wait to dig into it.
We try to follow the rules here at Faux Fan Pod. We take this pod very seriously, super seriously.
We do, and by rules we mean self-imposed rules.
They're self-imposed rules. I was having so much trouble. So I felt what was fair was that I would give Sara 10 half-hour episodes that she gave to me similar to Letterkenny. And I felt like that was such a challenge for Sara to pick 10 half-hour episodes spanning 9 seasons. And how do you get a feel for it? And I was on the other end of the equation this time around. And there are so many good moments and characters. How do you boil it down? And so I sent Sara, I was like, oh, there are some honorable mentions. And I do have to say to family listeners, she said, I'll watch it. For the purposes of this discussion, I had to focus on 10.
I know the rules make it so tough and it's so hard to narrow it down when it's so much material. I did watch extra, but we can keep it to the 10.
So the list, and I have to tell you, I had significant input from one of my best friends from high school and college, the one I used to watch when I was there in Altoona, and also Eric and a lot of my friends, because how do you whittle it down to 10? So for the purpose of this conversation, we went through the Chinese restaurant, the movie, the contest, the Hamptons, the soup, not to be confused with the soup Nazi, which is another one that was included on the list here, the race, the Bizarro Jerry, the muffin tops, and the strike. And the strike is also known as the Festivus episode. So that's one that I completely forgot to mention, even in the intro. Festivus is December 23rd. You will now see everywhere on social media. It's a Festivus for the rest of us. I mean, they made their own holiday.
Festivus is something I am familiar with. My dad's side of the family has quoted that for years. And when we would gather together for Christmas Eve, there would be a large number of people wishing each other a happy Festivus.
Was there an aluminum pole and a feats of strength?
There was not an aluminum pool, but we did discuss potentially getting one in future years, and also the airing of grievances, which kind of just happened anyway when family gets together. So I think we tried to celebrate.
Frank Costanza, talk about a supporting cast of characters that's so rich. Mickey, who is his tiny person friend, Frank Costanza, Jerry's parents, George's mom is really David Putty. I don't know if you saw anything with him, Elaine's boyfriend. There's just so many people that are on this. And actually a running gag is Jerry has a different girlfriend almost every single episode. And when you go back and look at the actresses, it's Courtney Cox, who you might not recognize her though, Sara. You might not recognize
That's true.
her.
It might take me a full episode to realize.
Anna Gunn, Lauren Graham is one of them. There's Terry Hatcher. There are so many of these actresses that were his girlfriend, Amanda Peet. Anyway, we center on 4 New Yorkers, Jerry, George, Kramer, and Elaine. So let's start with the namesake himself, Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry, who is the writer and producer of the show. And an aside here, he wrote this show with Larry David, who then went on to do Curb Your Enthusiasm. You know, what's so weird is I don't really care for Curb, but I think it's basically Seinfeld. So at some point I have to give it another shot. But Jerry is a fictionalized version of himself. He's a comedian trying to make it in New York City. And Sara, what are your perceptions of Jerry, or what do you think about him in the general makeup of the group?
I think, like we talked about earlier, he is, I think, the weakest of the 4 main characters. I think I probably laughed the least at his bits, but I think he's kind of the glue that kind of holds it all together as the main character. He is kind of what everyone else is centered around. And so I don't know that we could have the show without him. So I think he's essential for making this core group of characters.
He definitely plays the straight man to the wild antics of everybody else. So his role is very clearly defined. I'm enjoying him a lot more on a rewatch now because he has very cutting, deadpan humor in very throwaway moments that it's very pointed at his friends, and he's kind of the observational about this is ridiculous. He's got these really biting comments sometimes. There's one I just saw where they're at a dealership, which is a great one that almost made the list. And George is hungry, so he's trying to get change from under the vending machine. And he says, people drop change down here and they're too lazy to get it. It just goes, well, either that or they have some weird little hang up about lying face down in filth, you know? So I feel like, but I understand he by far is the weakest character. If you watch him, the more that you watch the show, he's trying not to laugh so much in all of the scenes. And that's kind of what makes it funny too. So I get it. Yeah.
I do love when characters break. So that'll be something that I'll look for as I continue to watch.
You'll see it so much. You know, Kramer will say something crazy and Gio will go, now that you mention it. He's just so sarcastic. Then we will go into his neighbor across the hall, Kramer. Sarah, do you know his first name?
Is it Cosmo?
It is Cosmo. That was a big reveal when it was on.
Yeah, Kramer I think is my favorite character. He is just so outlandish. The things that he says, the weird jobs that he finds himself doing, I think he was definitely a highlight of the show for me.
Kramer lives so much outside of reality, but he's able to do that because he's living in New York and he's got a lot of gumption. Kramer's hilarious. And I don't know that I've ever really seen a character like Kramer again. Even the way he slides into the apartment every time he's coming in, he's a very high energy character, and I think he's pretty funny.
The conversation between him and Jerry about should they leave the car, should they just wait for traffic to clear in the Puerto Rican Day Parade, his explanation on why they won't have to pay anything, he can just get a new car for free, I was laughing so loud at his explanation of how that all worked.
So you mentioned the Puerto Rican Day Parade. So a quick aside on that was an honorable mention that was not on our top list, but it's so exciting. That's one that I'm not as familiar with because when it aired, it was the one right before the finale. And there were just some sensitivities about, were they mocking the culture? I think that that's been sorted out now that it really wasn't. But I think at the time, there was a little bit of backlash. So that one is pulled from syndication. You still never see that when it is on TV, but it is on Netflix and it is on Hulu. And that one is so funny. I will say sometimes, Elaine, when she goes, hey, I went to Tufts. It was my safety school. So don't you talk to me about hardship. Yeah. There's just like some really good ones in that Puerto Rican Day Parade episode. So I'm glad that it's back out. And again, watching it objectively later in life, I don't think it's offensive, but I do understand at the time why they were sensitive to it.
Right.
Also, we have versions of that or other types of parades here in Chicago. We had one a couple weekends ago, and it's exactly the same thing on Reddit, on the news, everywhere. Avoid these streets. There's going to be a caravan. You don't want to get stuck in it. As somebody that's living in a city, I can really appreciate that episode now because it is true. It's 100% true.
Right. And I understand the need to unwind on a Sunday evening.
Yes.
So relatable.
I gotta have my buffer. So we then have George Costanza.
George might be my second favorite character. It's tough. I like all of them so much, but I thought George was hilarious. I think I knew maybe the most about George as a character. I know about his mother. I think their relationship is really funny. I just think he's hilarious.
I have a lot more appreciation for him as well when I'm watching it now. He's so cheap. Let's start with that.
Yes.
His character is cheap. It's not that he's cost conscious. He's absolutely cheap. He is so pathetic. He's got no spine. He's insecure about his balding. He ends up backing into all of these situations. He's the only character to be engaged. He works at the New York Yankees. He bounces all around. He's with Jerry writing the pilot, which is in the first couple seasons. I just think that he's always trying to figure out what is the minimum amount that I have to do to meet the social expectation here, and or what do I get back? He's always trying to finagle a deal. Well, if I can get an obituary clipping and I can bring it to the airline, I'll save $25. So
right.
I think he's pretty funny.
If I wear these clothes and pretend I'm a tourist, I can date this girl from the visitor center.
Exactly. And exactly. Because he's watching the guy's luggage and then takes it and starts wearing his clothes. It's so weird. And I will say, him and Elaine's dynamic is fantastic because she goes at him and vice versa. And they are clearly only friends because they're both friends with Jerry.
Right.
And it's fun when the two of them get together. So I'm saving my favorite for last, which is Elaine Bennis, the queen, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I know we talked about our girl crush on Gina Davis. I will not go on so long about Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but I will say she is somebody that I absolutely adore. There's something about her being a woman that really holds her own with these guys. He thinks she is so much better than the other three of them, and she's not. And that's what actually makes her worse. So to me, there's an episode that I didn't show you where a saleswoman is rude to her, won't give her the time of day. So what she decides to do is she's going to take the day off work, go buy all of this stuff from another store and parade around in front of the store of the saleswoman so that she sees the sales commission go out the door. The running joke then that you find out later is that saleswoman owns both stores. She's Gladys Mayo. She is so petty. She's so petty. And honestly, I just think she's hilarious. She has these, I would say, violent outbursts.
I was watching a game show recently, and the title of one of the episodes was A Girl at Boys Night, and that's kind of how I feel about Elaine. She is the one girl in this boys club, but she totally fits in perfectly. She's roughhousing with them, giving it back as hard as she's getting it. So I think that I love that she's a woman in this group, but she completely fits the dynamic so well.
And they do a little bit at the beginning of her and Jerry dating, and then that doesn't work out. She stays in the friend group, which is great. When you talk about Julia Louis-Dreyfus, she then went on to play Selena Meyer in Veep, which I have not seen. Have you seen?
I haven't seen it.
So everybody says, and I would believe this, that Veep is actually her magnum opus. She is the most awarded comedian in history. And she won the Emmy for Veep so many years in a row that she said, I'm not even going to enter myself anymore. I think I've won enough awards. Let's let other people. So she did win for Elaine as well. So I think she's just hilarious. And then the one thing I would say is if you are looking for a podcast other than Faux Fam Pod, she has a podcast called Wiser Than Me, and she only interviews women that are older than her. Rhea Perlman, Diane von Furstenberg, Fran Lebowitz. They talk about their career, their life. Bonnie Raitt was a great episode. But she also talks to them about how old do you feel? How are you dealing with aging? What would you tell yourself when you were younger? She's a really good interviewer. And at the end of each episode, she calls her mom and she tells her mom the best piece of advice that she heard on the podcast. So I would just say quick plug on that. But I am also a huge JLD fan.
That sounds like a great podcast. I'm definitely going to have to listen to it because I haven't yet.
Sarah, I think you would love it. So
yeah.
Anyway, we have our cast of characters, Jerry, George, Kramer, and Elaine. Sarah, I think we just kind of bounce around like we did on Letterkenny. What episodes did you really like? What moments did you really like?
I know the Chinese restaurant was the first episode that was on the list, but I feel like I want to start with that one because I felt like it was giving a Cafe Luso while I was watching it.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yes,
Maybe.
I felt the pain of having to wait so long for your food. Granted, in this episode, they were just waiting for a table, but I felt the anger building as I was watching them wait for this table at the restaurant.
That one is top to bottom. So here's how I narrowed in on these 10. Is if that is the one on syndication, I will stop and it will be on until it is over. I will do that mostly for Seinfeld, but I'm also not above, changing if it's one I don't like. In a top to bottom episode of the best moments, I think I have to play the clip here of George waiting for the phone call. So George is waiting for a date to call him. He goes into all of the things that really could only happen to George on why he's on the rocks with this girl. He's waiting for her to call. And the maitre d' says, Cartwright. Everybody looks around. And so it's when George realizes that the call was for him. So I'm just going to play that right now.
Excuse me, I'm expecting a call. Costanza?
Yes, I just got a call. I yell, Cartwright, just like that. Nobody came up, I hang up.
Well, was it for Costanza or?
Yes, that's it. Nobody answered.
She called. He yelled Cartwright. I missed her.
Who's Cartwright?
I'm Cartwright.
You're not Cartwright.
Of course I'm not Cartwright!
That part just cracked me up. I was laughing so hard.
And it's just one of those situations where there are no answers. The ancillary characters don't give a lot of answers, but you find that as an adult. People will just answer the way they want to answer, and it's fine. So
Exactly.
Now that you say Cafe Luso, that's probably right, but I just got angry thinking about Cafe Luso, so I think we should move on. Let's
move on. But staying in the vein of food, because I think all of the food-based episodes ended up being my favorite, whether that says anything about me or not. The soup episode I felt was a personal attack because I think we got to talk. Is soup a meal?
The discourse from Elaine in this is where I fall, where she's saying, did he crumble any crackers? I think a cracker crumble makes it a meal. I agree with her. You know what? Should we just play her opinion on it?
I think we have to because it's so funny.
So he just gets soup. He wants to save the meal. So now I got to do it all over again.
What kind of soup did he get?
I don't know, consomme or something.
Consomme.
What?
Well, that's really not a meal, Jerry. I mean, if he had gotten chicken gumbo or matzo ball, even mushroom barley, then I would agree with you. Those are very hearty soup.
You're missing the whole point.
What?
The meal is the act of sitting down with him. It doesn't matter what you get.
Was it a cup or a bowl? I'm just curious.
A bowl, okay?
Did he crumble any crackers in it? Did he crumble any crackers in it?
As a matter of fact, he did.
Oh, well, crackers in a bowl. That could be a meal.
What do you think, Sarah?
Cousin husband and I actually disagree on this quite a bit. I think soup is a meal. I think it roughly depends on the size of the bowl. If I go to a restaurant and I want soup as a side, I'm going to order a cup. But if I just want it as a meal, I'm going to order a bowl, and that's enough for me. He does not think that soup is a meal. We disagree about this quite a bit. But I am somebody who would eat soup all day, every day for every meal and be so happy.
I would never say that a cup of soup is a meal.
No.
But what about soup in a bread bowl? That is absolutely a meal.
That is a meal, yes.
I understand Jerry's perspective. Now, we didn't even talk about Banya because he's another one of these ancillary characters that's hilarious. And he pops up all throughout the series. That's the thing, is they bring back all these characters.
And I loved all of the little references to all of the bits in the past. Now, I know I only watched 10 episodes in isolation, and I wasn't seeing an entire season, but there were bits like Banya coming back, Reggie's, and
Monks. That is one of my favorite, when Reggie's is so, it's a salad, only bigger. with lots of stuff in it.
I can bring you 2 small salads. You put them in a big bowl. We don't have those.
I know. Jerry's point is taken when he says, I'm going to take you out for a meal. And he clearly can't stand Banya. And Banya says, I'm going to save the meal for another time. I understand being like, no, this is not an open invitation for us to then be friends. The act of going out is a meal. I do understand that.
Right. I would agree with that too. If I were in that situation and somebody ordered soup, that would be it. That's the meal.
Would just be over.
For an Armani soup.
We talked a little bit about the muffin tops and that you eat muffins like that. So you would be a patron of top of the muffin, do you?
I would. So here's the thing. I don't buy muffin tops. I think Panera sells them. They're so expensive.
Seinfeld started the muffin tops. Again, that's just an example of what you're seeing 30 years later. But go ahead.
Right. So I won't buy them. But when I do eat a muffin, I flip it upside down and I pull the stub off first, or the stump, whatever she calls it. And I eat that first, and then I eat the muffin top last because that's my favorite part. So I totally relate to the idea of just pulling off the muffin tops.
One of the highlights of that episode is Rebecca De Mornay, who is the shelter person that comes to talk to them and complain about the muffin stumps. Now, what's so funny about that is Rebecca De Mornay was this blonde bombshell actress in the 90s. And so then this character pops up in a couple different Seinfeld episodes. And honestly, one of the reasons why I picked that specific episode is because I wanted you to see Rebecca De Mornay because she's so funny. Elaine just goes at it with her. And I did want to say shout out to Rebecca De Mornay because I loved her.
The other two really standout full episodes. Of course, the Soup Nazi was hilarious with the specific way you had to order the armoire that got stolen. Those two characters that stole the armoire, I think, were a highlight for me, for sure.
They pop up again when
in the
Kramer,
Puerto Rican parade they were in.
Oh, okay. And also when Kramer has to walk in the AIDS walk and he refuses to wear the ribbon. They turn around and they're like, who does not want to wear the ribbon? Yeah, these two guys. He's like, we're taking the armoire and we're I completely forgot about that. And that's another one where Elaine is so petty.
And of course, that one's a little close to home because I have met the Soup Nazi
at Steel City Con. Yes. And was he? Sarah, details.
He did buy hot sauce off of Cousin Husband's hot sauce. Shout out to Maestro's Sauce Co. If you've not tried it, they ship internationally, so please give it a try.
That's Maestros. And I will say the taco sauce I use as my tot sauce for tater tots is delicious. Shout out to Maestros.
Indeed. So he did buy hot sauce off of them. They have a picture with him. I didn't get to work with him, but I was waiting for the celebrity that I was working with to arrive. So I was just kind of checking the floor, making sure everyone was set up. And he's so sweet. He comes with his wife. She's his agent. I just talked to them for a little bit, made sure that they were all set up and ready to go. So just a quick interaction, but he was super nice. And I know he's come to Steel City Con a couple of times. I think he really loves Pittsburgh and people love him. So I'm glad that he gets the recognition from everything that he's done, but mostly for the Soup Nazi.
Because I would tell you right now, I don't know anything else that he's done. And I'm not sorry. Yeah. That role is so iconic. Good for him.
Yeah, I think he's just one of those character actors that's done a lot of TV show guest star appearances.
But if I saw him anywhere else, I would say, is that the Soup Nazi? I don't care what his name is. If that makes me a bad person, that's fine. But no, he's the Soup Nazi.
Yeah. So that was definitely a standout for me. And then, of course, the strike, not only because of Festivus, but also Kramer's idea that he can go on strike for 12 years and then suddenly be called back to this bagel shop only to go on strike again was so ridiculous. I found it hilarious.
I think on top of the Festivus, George Costanza, that's a really front and center. Frank Costanza is everywhere in that episode. And the more Frank, the better for me. Elaine, again, going to great lengths to track down a sandwich punch card because she's got 9 punches on the card and she needs the 10th one. And she hates to eat the sandwiches, but she wants the free Admiral's cap that comes when you order the 10th sandwich. So she's going to all these lengths to try to get him back. The Hamptons episode, that's the one with George and Shrinkage. Elaine meets this hot doctor and he says she's breathtaking. And she's so flattered. That's the thing. She gets so flattered so easily.
She does.
And I love it. Then the baby's ugly. And the doctor calls the baby breathtaking. And so then she makes it the rest of the episode on trying to figure out if he was being polite to the mother or if he was being polite to her. And she's like, because if that baby is breathtaking, then, you know, he's insulting me. And she's like, it's just insane. And the way that it's written is he never gives her a straight answer. Like he says, well, Elaine, sometimes you say things just to be polite. And she
Right.
doesn't
And then
know.
he says something like this omelet is breathtaking or something like that. And she's like, okay.
I mean, the Bizarro Jerry's a good one because it's everybody acting differently, and man hands is that. Man hands is totally in the lexicon right now. You could say to man hands and most people know that.
Oh, yeah. I thought that episode was hilarious because of the reference to Reggie's, that this group of polar opposites of them were going to the other restaurant that they won't go to. I just thought that was such a funny callback.
Well, and down to everything. The Kramer is a Feldman, and he says, hey, it's Feldman from across the hall, and he rings the doorbell, and everything's so different.
I brought
the George character. What'd you say?
I brought you groceries.
Yeah, the George character is well read and generous, and I love that episode. It's really growing on me. The race. Mickey, I will say it randomly every once in a while during the holidays. Santa is not a commie.
Kid,
Yeah.
you're a commie.
And Elaine's like, this is my boyfriend Ned. He's a communist. He's a big communist.
Right.
You know? So you have all that, but then you have the scene where they're trying to reset up the race and Jerry and George are pretending like they haven't seen each other in 15 years and they start trading these barbs, but you know that they're trading the barbs. It's just so funny. So
Right. And on top of all of that, Lois, the girl that Jerry's dating, is going to break up with him if he cheated on this race in junior high.
it's so funny.
So
And
ridiculous.
one thing that I will say is Jerry Seinfeld is a huge Superman fan. So you actually see a lot of references to Superman. There's Superman in his apartment. If you start looking for that, you kind of see it everywhere. So that's kind of why he keeps saying her name like that. Lois. So is there anything else on these 10 episodes or on these characters?
He didn't really touch on the contest. So I do have to say that episode was hilarious. The bit with George and his mom in the hospital while the nurse is giving the patient a sponge bath in the background was so funny. I was cracking up just by myself watching that episode the whole time.
That's the one that really put the show on the map. So I would say if you start watching Seinfeld from beginning to end, the first season's rough. You wonder how it actually got greenlit and picked up. The first couple seasons, they're really establishing their humor. You'll notice in the later episodes, they kind of cut Jerry doing the stand-up at the beginning off of it, and they kind of lean into the more really bizarre kind of situations than what's in the earlier episodes. But that episode of the contest is one that won all of the Emmy Awards for writing and really put the show on the map. And I think the subject matter of what they're talking about, the way they go about, because you got to remember this was on network television in the early 90s, the way that they go about having all of these jokes land. So for example, when Elaine says, I want to get in on the contest, and they say, no, it's totally different for a woman. You know, it's like shaving for men. And she says, I shave my legs. And Kramer goes, not every day. That one is kind of the classic Seinfeld. the one that won all the awards and put them on the.
That's everything that I had. So we can cut it to break. And when we come back, we'll talk the finale and wrap up our Seinfeld discussion.
Things that's so simple about Seinfeld, that's so effective and works so well, is the intro music. It's nothing flashy, it's nothing great. I'm going to play it right now for our listeners.
Kind of like the Letterkenny intro, to kind of make a connection back to that. It's just a very simple little bit. It's the same every time. It doesn't take too long or away from the show. So I do love that about it. And it's such an iconic sound clip.
Absolutely. And you don't get confused if you hear that at Seinfeld. I want to hear remix and dub club step songs with the Seinfeld theme as the anchor. Let's get serious. I'm sure it probably already exists, but I'm going to pretend like I just made that up right now. I would jam to that. I would run to that for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So real quick in closing out before we get into the final thought, I did want to address maybe a little bit of the elephant in the room, which is the finale. So you will notice, Sarah, that I did not include the finale in the top 10 episodes to watch. And can I ask you, did you end up watching the finale?
I haven't watched the finale yet.
To set the scene on the finale and to explain why I did not include it, when Seinfeld decided they were doing the finale, it was going into season 9. The news made the front page of newspapers all around the country, including the New York Times. It was one of the only 3 shows, the other ones being I Love Lucy and Andy Griffith, that went out at number 1 in the television ratings. Jerry Seinfeld turned down $5 million an episode, $100 million for a season 10. It was at the peak of pop culture. It was everywhere. They were making their money. Jerry Seinfeld, if you kind of look at the lineage here, it's his show. He's the executive producer. He wrote it. Him and Larry David get the lion's share of the money. Michael Richards, Jason Alexander, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, from a royalty perspective, are nowhere in the range that Jerry Seinfeld was. And he turned down $100 million in the salary alone for season 10. So him deciding to walk away when the show was on top was a really big decision that he made. I will say what I have read is that the cast totally backs his decision, had clearly said it was his show, it was his brainchild, he was a writer, he was a producer. They didn't have any hard feelings. And I think they've all gone on to have some pretty good success. I would say Julia Louis-Dreyfus in particular. When the finale aired, 76.3 million viewers tuned in live. And now this is back in 1998, 1999. So think about it. It was one of every 2 television viewers in the country that night tuned in for the Seinfeld finale. And the reason why I didn't include it is because the finale is pretty much considered one of the worst finales of all time.
That's wild for a show that was so on top.
Yes, it's reviled. It regularly makes the top list of worst finales ever, or it's definitely in the top 3, which is so funny because we talked at the top of the episode at how Seinfeld is regularly considered the best television. So what I would say is, I think it just speaks to the quality of the show that the finale can be so hated and the show is still so loved. Now, to give you the Cliff's Notes, essentially, the 4 of them end up going to revive the Jerry pilot, which is something from the earlier episodes. And they end up stranded in this small town in Rhode Island, and they watch a guy getting mugged, and they do what they do, which is make fun of him, right? Don't help him. Well, there's a new Good Samaritan law, and they're the first ones charged with it. And so they end up going to court. And essentially, what the finale ends up being is a clip show where they bring back all of the old characters to come back as character witnesses for the prosecution about what terrible people these people are. They end up getting sentenced to a year in jail. That's how it ends, is that the four of them are zoomed out on a jail cell. Initial thoughts as somebody that maybe as I'm looking at you, is hearing this information for the first time.
So that sounds terrible. I like the idea of the character witnesses, but I don't think I like it for a finale. I think them ending up in jail is such a horrible ending because, as we said, they don't have any character growth, and so that stays consistent, but I don't even think being in jail fits into that standard that the show has set.
It was a choice. It's pretty bizarre. I think because I liked the show so much, I have always been somewhat of a defender of the finale. And to be honest with you, it's because I'm biased. I want it to be so much better than it is. When the finale comes on, so now it's split into 2 parts when it's on syndication, I skip it every time. I will not watch the finale because it just really lacks something for me. Interestingly enough, I was speaking to Eric earlier this year. Larry David wrapped up Curb Your Enthusiasm this year, and it started going in the same direction where I guess he gave a cup of water to somebody standing in line in Georgia for voting. And he was prosecuted by this new law that you're not allowed to do that. So they kind of do the same thing. They have Larry David in the courtroom. They bring back all the people from Curb Your Enthusiasm. They send Larry David to jail. And so you think it's going to end the same way. And Jerry Seinfeld shows up and opens the jail cell and says, "Trust me, nobody likes this ending. Just, we got you out. We worked a deal with so-and-so and we got you out." So 30 years later, there's this tongue-in-cheek nod to it, which again, just kind of, I probably owe the finale a shot again, because at least there's kind of, it feels like a little bit of closure that they're trying to course correct and acknowledge that it wasn't a strong ending. So I know when you gave me the Letterkenny episodes, you gave me the ending, and I told you there was just so much heart in it, and I could tell that there were probably these callbacks, and it was heartwarming, and there was optimism. You don't get that with Seinfeld, but I also think that that's probably true to the show and true to the characters.
That makes sense. I'm going to watch it, so I'll watch the finale, but I'm sure I will not enjoy it.
The only other thing I'll say in closing real quick is that David Puddy, Elaine's boyfriend, I have to give him a shout out. He is played by Patrick Warburton. He plays this bimbo, this male bimbo that is just so lazy, putting no effort into the relation. They always end up back together. Just wanted to shout out to David Puddy.
I really enjoyed this show. I think the cast was hilarious. I love the cameos and the side characters that were introduced in the episodes that I watched. Just really quick-witted, and also that, like, a little bit of that dry humor, which I tend to like. So I definitely appreciated that about this show.
Will you continue watching it at your leisure?
What I've decided is, I know we've talked about this before, but usually between Halloween and Thanksgiving, I get a little bit of a dry spell in terms of what I want to watch. So I think I've decided that I'm going to take some of these larger sitcoms and try to work through them during that time. So Seinfeld, Cheers, the classics that I have not either watched in a while or haven't watched a lot of. So I'm definitely going to give it a shot, but I think I'm going to pause so I can watch all of the Halloween stuff, and then I'll come back to it in a couple of weeks.
Well, you'll have to let me know, because I've never seen Cheers. So that's an interesting
husband
thing
is a
for
big
me.
fan of Cheers, so
That's so interesting to me.
yeah.
All right, finally, let's rate it to a Little Debbie snack cake.
So I'm gonna go with the peanut crunch Little Debbie's. I think it was something that I walked past in the store and was like, "Ew, that's gross. Who eats that?" And I didn't want to try it. And I think similarly, as we talked about, I had an aversion to laugh tracks or a live studio audience. And so that was something that was really keeping me away from the show. But once I tried it, I found out that it was actually really enjoyable. And it's something that I want to continue to enjoy.
Love that. For me, I said this was a fudge round, and I would say it was a regular single fudge round, because I think Fudge rounds were my entry into Little Debbie, and I ate a lot of them in high school and in college. Like, fudge rounds were always my favorite. Now, I have explored out and I have found Little Debbie's that I enjoy as much, if not maybe more, when I'm in the mood of stuff. So I would always say Seinfeld's my favorite, but obviously, you know, we're fans of The Office, although that is a lot, I think. But Community, I love Community. And when I was watching Community for the first time, I felt like I have not enjoyed a show like this, like Seinfeld. So I always say it's Seinfeld and then Community is my number 2. And so is that a cosmic brownie? Is it a oatmeal cream pie? Like, you find different flavors and things that you like. But I return to a fudge round all the time. I'm never disappointed in a fudge round. I always enjoy it. And just from the sheer volume of Little Debbie's that I've consumed, I think the majority, if we're counting through the ages, were likely a fudge round. So it's the highest praise in the world. It's comfortable. I think it's funny. And I genuinely laugh every single time that I've seen these episodes because the comedy just holds up. The situations are so relatable. It's just so funny because it's just human interactions. And so I'm a huge fan.
I will definitely keep watching, and then we'll talk about it as I go through the seasons.
Sounds great. And I'm actually due to pick back up Letterkenny. So we'll do it together. We'll start and then we can start doing that again. So
perfect.
That is it for this episode of Foreign and Familiar. We want to hear all of your thoughts on Seinfeld, only the good ones, because, you know, now on the interwebs, Sarah, it is cool to say, I just don't get it. I just don't get Seinfeld. But
oh, yeah.
Did Cousin Husband watch with you?
He watched the race episode, and it was actually really funny because he kept laughing and then going, I'm not laughing. So I think he really enjoyed it.
He's one of those that doesn't want to like it, but knows it's funny. So
follow us on Instagram over at FauxFamPod for more on Seinfeld, behind the scenes of us filming this season. And if you have any suggestions or questions for us, you can email us at foreign.
Thanks for eavesdropping on us.
If you can't get enough of the Cousin Chronicles, head over to Instagram and follow at FauxFamPod for more in-depth info and behind-the-scenes details.
Or email us at foreignfamiliarpod@gmail.com.
Foreign and Familiar is a Flynn & Flynn production.
The theme is Colorful by Allerlie von Nicolai.